Hey guys, it's me back to you today with another video, and today I will be talking about the fact that I wish that the Tolkien Estate would have agreed and greenlit or approved of HBO doing a remake of the Lord of the Rings movies, but into a series. And what's interesting about it is the fact that Christopher Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien's son himself, even stated that the movies eviscerated his father's books, meaning that those three movies in the original Lord of the Rings trilogy from 2001 to 2003 ruined or wrecked his father's books. And you know what? I couldn't agree more, because there's a lot of things about the movies that I hate. Well, I guess I wouldn't say a lot, but there are at least some things that I hate, such as the fact that Peter Jackson, like a literal stupid fucking faggot, added unnecessary, pointless, just straight up bullshit scenes of guy characters burping and farting, and even more burp or fart scenes in the extended editions of the three movies than even in the theatrical versions or releases of those three movies. Like, for example, in the first Lord of the Rings movie, The Fellowship of the Ring, in 2001, in just the theatrical version, when the four hobbits, Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin, go to Bree, the village, where they end up meeting Aragorn, and where they thought they were going to meet up with Gandalf, but of course he wasn't there because he was taken prisoner or whatever by Saruman. But anyways, when they first go there, they're kind of observing all the villagers, which are all like men or women or whatever. And one of the characters is just some random villager, doesn't have any lines, and it's actually even Peter Jackson himself, who throughout pretty much all three of the movies would just kind of put himself in those three movies as pretty much pointless, unnecessary side characters that had no lines, that were just random characters. And he just had himself as a cameo as one of the villagers in the village of Bree. And I think he was eating a carrot, and then he burps, and it's kind of a quiet burp, so it's like, okay, whatever. But I mean, if you turn up the volume, you can clearly tell it's a fucking burp. And then in the extended edition of Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, there's a scene where Legolas is telling both Merry and Pippin about the lemnis bread, or the elven bread, or whatever you call it. And he takes a really tiny bite, and then he said, one small bite is enough to feed the stomach of a full-grown man. And then he walks away, and then Merry asks Pippin, how many did you eat? And Pippin replies, 4. And then he does this massive belch. And, you know, what the most annoying thing about that is the fact that J.R.R. Tolkien himself never put or added or included any burp or fart dialogue in any of his three Lord of the Rings books. Because you have to keep in mind that when J.R.R. Tolkien himself started writing the Lord of the Rings books, he started writing and releasing them like late in his life, when he was already an old man. I think the first Lord of the Rings book was like finished and completed when he was like 50 years old. Like when he actually published it, I think he was like 50 years old or 60 or some shit like that. And like, I think each book took him like, I don't know, maybe like 10 years to even write and finish or whatever. Both like for like obviously The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and Return of the King. And he was an old man, and he was an old English man, to be exact. And back then, when he was alive and during his life, when he started writing those books, English people or British people were way more modest. They were way more intelligent and sophisticated, and their minds were just so much more advanced and developed. They were way more mature back then during the time when J.R.R. Tolkien was writing those books. And even knowing and considering that he himself was an old man, and old men don't find toilet humor funny or humorous or original or something that's never been done before. Toilet humor is something that has been going on since like the 1990s and early 2000s. It is not original. It's nothing new. It's nothing we haven't heard before. It's pathetic. It's just such a weak attempt at humor because it's like, can you not think of anything else better to do that's actually funny and original? But clearly that would take too much intelligence, which clearly and obviously Peter Jackson himself did not have when he was directing or writing or whatever those stupid ass versions of his movies. And, you know, it pisses me off because I will say this. There are a lot of things I love about his movies. I mean, honest to God, I'm not even kidding. There are a lot of things that I do love about his movies and appreciate about them, such as the cast, where he filmed them in New Zealand and probably parts in the UK and Germany or whatever. At least that's what I saw when, like, seeing the ending credits or whatever. And also, not to mention, I love the music. I love the costumes, and just there's a lot of great things about those movies, and there are a lot of really amazing, incredible scenes in those movies that are really awesome and cool or whatever. But at the same time, he still watered them down, or dumbed them down, in other words, for both modern UK and American audiences by adding and including toilet humor of guy characters burping or farting in those three movies of his, which, again, was just completely and totally unnecessary and pointless. And there is no question about it. He did not need to include that bullshit in his movies. I mean, honestly, if he hadn't, I would have loved those movies more. I'm dead serious. If he had not included ridiculous scenes of guy characters burping and farting, either Peter Jackson as one of just the random villagers in the village of Bree when the hobbits go there and just randomly burps for no apparent reason after taking a bite of a carrot or whatever the hell it was. And then in the extended edition of the Fellowship of the Ring, Pippin burping, or should I say belching, because he ate 4 lemnis or elven bread, when if he would have just taken one small bite, that would have been enough to fill his stomach. But of course he had to eat 4 and then do this massive ass belch. And then in Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, the second movie, there's a scene when Aragorn is telling Theoden, who is the king of Rohan, he's telling him, like, war is upon you, whether you would risk it or not. And then Theoden gets really irritated, and then he replies to Aragorn saying, when last I looked, Theoden, not Aragorn, was king of Rohan. And right after he says that, when it's supposed to be obviously a somewhat serious scene because they're having a argument or having a debate with each other. But then right after that, Gimli, like the stupid fat fuck he is, had to burp not just once, but 3 times. Because he was like drinking either too fast or too much, and he lets off 3 belches. And it's like, really, Peter Jackson? What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, that was supposed to be a serious argument, debate, or discussion. And it's like, even if Gimli burped, it's not like Peter Jackson had to necessarily show that scene. Like, he didn't have to shift the camera all of a sudden to, like, John Rhys Davis or whatever the actor's name is who plays Gimli in those 3 movies, and have the camera just completely focus on him so that we can see him burp 3 times. Oh, wow, that's so amazing, Peter Jackson. That's so beautiful and original and fresh and something that we have not ever seen before in movies and TV shows. Like, wow, you really did something so unique and just new and just out of this world by putting and adding more toilet humor. Like, great on you. Good job. And, you know, it just pisses me off. It pisses me off. It enrages me. It makes me furious as hell. Just fuming. Because J.R.R. Tolkien, if he would have lived to be really, really old and would have seen those movies, and especially the extended editions of his books, but adapted into 3 films, he would have been disgusted. Because even Christopher Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien's son, his son, hated the movies. And you know, that's what makes me have so much more respect for Christopher Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien's son, because even he himself literally just hated those movies. I mean, he said in his own words, and I quote, and I only know this because I read this article about how HBO, the same TV company that made the TV show series Game of Thrones and also just recently House of the Dragon, they're also planning on doing a bunch of like spin-off Game of Thrones series as well, like prequel series, sequel series, and shit like that. And they originally pitched a Lord of the Rings remake idea or like vision or whatever to the Tolkien Estate to remake the Lord of the Rings movies, but in a series, which I would have been really interested and fascinated and just all around excited into seeing just how that would have been or how that would have went, how that would have played out. Because honestly, if HBO would have been given like the go-ahead by the Tolkien Estate to remake the Lord of the Rings movies in a series, there's no denying the fact that they could have done more of the books, and hell, maybe even been more faithful and accurate to J.R.R. Tolkien's vision of the books and like more of the stuff that actually happened in the books, like Tom Bombadil, for example, or more of the like poetry or poems or songs or whatever in the book that they just completely leave out in the movies. And also, J.R.R. Tolkien himself was a Catholic. Peter Jackson, on the other hand, does not at all seem like a Catholic guy. Like, J.R.R. Tolkien was like a hardcore, stern, firm, like just strong Catholic believer. And knowing that also, you can also understand that in his books, when he made him, and also in his old age, he had a lot of like spiritualism and mysticism and like religious like themes and aspects to his Lord of the Rings books and like the other books he also made as well, like The Hobbit or The Silmarillion or whatever, because I know he made some other books too. And Peter Jackson, on the other hand, is not a Catholic. I mean, there's no question about it. He's, if anything, a worldly piece of trash, if anything. I mean, there is no denying it. I mean, it could not be more obvious, knowing just very well that Peter Jackson is just a worldly idiot. And not only that, but he's a fat fuck. And, you know, fat people pass more gas than people who are more healthy and like the healthy weight that they should be at. And J.R.R. Tolkien was not fat. Hell, he wasn't even chubby. He was healthy his whole life. And he was a good man. He may not have been perfect, but he was a good man, and I respect him, even though I never personally knew him. And I mean, even if I wanted to, I mean, he's long gone deceased, but his descendants are alive, such as like his children and grandchildren and stuff like that. And I think J.R. Tolkien was an awesome book author. Hell, he was so humble. He didn't even originally want to make the Lord of the Rings books. Well, okay, not that he didn't want to make them, but he didn't think that the world would have appreciated them or loved his books, that they would have respected him and respected his art and work and whatnot. And because he was friends with C.S. Lewis, who was also a Christian, C.S. Lewis was the one who convinced J.R.R. Tolkien to release or publish those books of his. C.S. Lewis said in his own words to his friend J.R.R. Tolkien, "The world needs those books. They need your books. We do." Like, he encouraged J.R.R. Tolkien to release him. And that's how humble J.R.R. Tolkien was. Peter Jackson, on the other hand, does not at all seem humble. At least to me anyways. He does not come off as a humble, meek, righteous, God-fearing, God-believing, strong, like hardcore, firm Catholic movie director. He doesn't. Not the slightest bit. And not to mention the fact that, and like I said before and earlier in this video, he's not at all mature. He's a child. He's a moron. I mean, just knowing that he would add toilet humor to his versions or his take on the movies to try to, like, pretty much water down J.R.R. Tolkien's work and almost in a way make a complete and total joke out of it, as if he's like mocking or making fun of or laughing at J.R.R. Tolkien's work or his art, which to me shows that Peter Jackson does not respect J.R.R. Tolkien, because he's taking a big fat giant piss and shit all over his work, all over his beautiful, magnificent work that he did. And J.R.R. Tolkien suffered like hell growing up, even since he was a kid. And I'm trying to currently read the Lord of the Rings books. I mean, a while ago, I actually bought the 3 Lord of the Rings books, but like 3-in-1 hardcover, under $100 from the UK, from a UK website. It wasn't the Folio Society. It was a different website, like book company from the UK. And I bought it, illustrated version and whatnot. And I've been reading it, and it is way more deep and powerful and sad. Like, the more I read about the Lord of the Rings book, the further I go into the book, the more like depressed or sad I become or get, and I literally start crying. And I know the same is going to happen when I start reading my Game of Thrones books, and I'm so happy that I also have those books and the illustrated versions of them, the best illustrated versions of the Game of Thrones books that you can possibly get, but sadly they're so damn expensive, which is the only thing that sucks about them. I honestly wish they weren't so expensive. I would have rather preferred them being a lot cheaper. Like, I wouldn't have minded paying maybe like $100 at the very most for the Folio Society illustrated versions of the 5 Game of Thrones books that I bought. But no, they're $230, and then you also have to pay for shipping. So the shipping is not even free. You either can pay like a $35 shipping for like 14 to 21 days shipping, or you can pay for faster shipping, which is like 7 days or something like that. But I mean, it's insane. It really is so insane. Like, I just think it's stupid that those books are so expensive as they are, but also you have to pay for shipping. I mean, usually when things are that expensive about like anything, books, clothes, movies, shows, whatever, you'll most likely get free shipping. I mean, maybe pay for tax too, but no, like, you have to pay for shipping too. And I mean, I guess that makes sense knowing that the Folio Society book company is from the UK and it's in London. So knowing that they have to ship it overseas, I mean, I guess it makes sense why I would have to pay for shipping. And getting things from another country does cost a lot of money for shipping, more than just like buying something from the country that you already live in. But anyways, the Lord of the Rings book I bought though was a lot cheaper, and I bought that a while before I bought any of the Game of Thrones books, and I think it was like $70 or $75, maybe 80 at the very most. And it's a wonderful book. I love it so far, and I can't get enough of it. And I'm trying to read more of it, but it's hard when I'm just really addicted to watching movies and TV shows, which I have a lot of now, and also going on my phone too much, which I'm also very much addicted to. But honestly, I prefer watching movies and TV shows on my TV rather than spending too much time on my cell phone. But that's just me personally. But anyways, I also wanted to mention, and I almost forgot to mention it, that, you know, in the extended edition of Return of the King of Lord of the Rings, there's a stupid ass bullshit extended scene where Legolas and Gimli are having a drinking contest, and they're drinking, but of course Legolas, being all like perfect and angelic like he is, which is just so damn annoying and just retarded. And Gimli's just chugging down like beer or whatever, some sort of alcohol. I imagine it's beer. And so anyway, he's chugging them down, and then he lifts up his ass off the chair, and then he farts, and then he starts laughing like a literal maniac, as if he thinks it is so hilarious that he farted. Like, wow, that's just pathetic. And then not only does he fart, and a pretty loud fart too, but also after that, he says some like weird comment like, "We dwarves and we go swimming with little hairy women," and then right after he says that, he belches. And then he goes cross-eyed when he belches, and then like after he goes cross-eyed and belches, he eventually like drinks too much to where he falls back in the chair. And it's like, stuff like that J.R.R. Tolkien would have never done. And you know what? I am well aware of the fact that in the Return of the King book, even though I haven't read it yet, I have been told by people online, so I'm not a fucking idiot, I have been told that Legolas and Gimli do have a drinking contest in the book of Return of the King. Fine. Fair enough. Fair point. But at the same time, I highly doubt J.R.R. Tolkien would have written like, "Then Gimli farted," or "Then Gimli burped." I mean, it's so much more weird, like, having like a burp or fart dialogue in a book than it is in a movie or a TV show series. Because it would just be ridiculous if you're this like really intelligent, wise, smart old book author and you're writing these books, and then you just are like, "And then so and so burped," or "Then so and so farted." It's like, there's no point. And you know, the only books that I've like known about that even does have shit like that in them are children's books. But the Lord of the Rings books are not children's books. Like, they're not children content. Like, I would say at least they're like teenager friendly, maybe, but some things in them I feel are even too dark for even teenagers. Same with the Game of Thrones books. They're even far darker than the show was. And the show was already extremely dark. And I know, because I watched it. I have it. The whole 8 seasons on 4K. And, you know, even knowing as dark as the Game of Thrones TV show series was by HBO, the books are even darker. And that makes me even more excited to start reading them after I'm finished reading my Lord of the Rings books. the 3-in-1. And but yeah, but you know what's weird is in the theatrical version of The Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King, there was never a drinking contest scene with Legolas and Gimli. So in the theatrical version of at least Return of the King, there was no burp and fart scene. Thank God. But I always wanted to get the extended editions of all three movies. Why? Because I wanted to see more scenes, mainly of Boromir. The main reason I wanted to see extended editions of all three movies, especially the first two, is because I knew that there would be more scenes of Boromir, who was my favorite character from the first movie, and a lot of other guys' favorite character as well, not just mine. And he was played by one of my favorite actors too, Sean Bean, who also played Ned Stark in Game of Thrones 10 years later, because The Fellowship of the Ring came out in 2001. 10 years later, in 2011, the first season of Game of Thrones came out. And in 2001, Sean Bean was 40 years old. In 2011, he was 50. And both those characters are awesome in their own unique way. And also, I saw like an extended trailer of The Two Towers, and I saw that there was an extended scene in The Two Towers where there's like a flashback of both Boromir and Faramir together. Like they're brothers, but there was an extended scene in The Two Towers where they're together. It's a flashback, and I thought that was pretty dope. And that was one of the reasons I also wanted to buy and get and see the extended edition of The Two Towers. But at the same time, I'm left disappointed and crushed because not only does Peter Jackson add more toilet humor in the extended edition versions of at least the first and the third movie, but also he only had an additional 30 minutes of extended scenes, just 30 minutes for each of the three movies. I mean, I think it would have been way more like logical and would have made way more sense for Peter Jackson to at least, at the very minimum, have made an hour of extended scenes for all three of the Lord of the Rings movies: The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and Return of the King. And I can only wish that he would have done that, but sadly he didn't. And that's what also pisses me off. And so that's all the more reason why I would have loved it if the Tolkien Estate would have like approved of and like greenlit and given HBO like permission and whatnot and the go ahead to have remade the Lord of the Rings movies or books or whatever, but in a TV series instead of like movies, because they had already been made in a movie trilogy, but they wanted to remake them in obviously their own version as in a TV series. So it's safe to say that each one of the books would have received a full season. And that way they could have done and shown more of the books of each of the three books. And I'm sure that they would have probably, if anything, done 10 episodes per each season and probably like an hour long per each episode, which would have been epic, just incredible. If that would have been the case and if that would have actually happened, I would have loved that. But sadly, that didn't happen. And I am just crushed that that didn't happen, because the reason the Tolkien Estate did not give HBO permission, the go-ahead or greenlit their Lord of the Rings series remake is because they didn't want to do something that had already been done before. But then the Tolkien Estate gave Amazon, of all companies, the permission to make the stupid fucking bitch-ass bullshit, woke, propaganda-filled prequel Lord of the Rings series, Rings of Power. And I think that's hilarious, especially knowing that it got canceled just after one season. Now that is funny as hell. That is hilarious that the Rings of Power got canceled and canned and just thrown away after just one single season. And that's what it gets because it's woke bullshit. It's woke propaganda. I don't want to see that garbage, and thank God I didn't, and thank God I'm not going to. But it's just, it sucks that they would give Amazon the permission to do that rather than have given HBO the permission to have remade The Lord of the Rings as in a series instead of just books, or not, instead of just movies. I'm sorry, I didn't mean books. It makes sense to why I could get things mixed up, but just bear with me, please. But anyways, it's just really unfortunate that the Tolkien Estate would be like, you know what, no, HBO, we don't want to like do something we've already done before, or like revisit something that has already been done in like a movie version or film adaptation version. So no, we're not going to give you the permission or go ahead or greenlit your like idea of remaking the Lord of the Rings books into a series, which would have been really epic and awesome. And I at least would have loved to see where that would have went and who they would have chose for a cast. And if there would have been toilet humor in the HBO remake Lord of the Rings series. And it also would have been pretty awesome to have compared the Lord of the Rings series remake to the original Lord of the Rings movie trilogy. But anyways, it's just really heartbreaking that it didn't happen. And not only did HBO try to pitch a Lord of the Rings remake series to the Tolkien Estate, but Netflix did too. And hell, I would have even taken Netflix any day over Amazon. But most of all, I would have definitely sided with HBO. HBO and Netflix, like, they both wanted to do things. Like, Netflix also wanted to do like a Gandalf series and a Aragorn, like, I guess prequel spin-off series or something like that. I don't know. But I mean, if you're interested, you can look up the article for yourself and read it on your own time. It's a really interesting article, but it's painful in a way because it's kind of like reading something that could have happened that didn't, which is just, again, it's heartbreaking. Because in my personal opinion, I would have loved a Lord of the Rings series instead of movie trilogy. And I would have been eager to see it and watch it and buy it and have it and whatnot. And especially knowing that it probably would not have been done by Peter Jackson again, which would have been a relief. Because they probably would have had different creators and writers and shit like that, which would have been pretty damn cool. As long as it wouldn't have been creators and writers and producers and whatnot that weren't into toilet humor and would have been like Catholics or Christians or whatever. I mean, I would have been on board with that shit all the way. But anyways, let me know what you all think in the comments section down below. I'm out.